everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I am here from Zita West Products and I'm joined by our wonderful Isabelle, our
Hi,
fertility coach.
Sophie.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good. Nice to see you.
Yes, yes, yeah. In context, last time I couldn't get my camera working, so I was a blank space for Sophie.
Yeah, it's nice to speak to someone. But yeah, thank you so much everyone for joining us tonight. So we will go through a short presentation just to talk through optimizing for IVF success with Isabelle. We will answer questions as we go through if they're not necessarily going to be covered later on and they're linked to what we're talking about. Otherwise, we do make notes of everything which we will answer at the end, and there'll also be a Q&A session at the end as well. So yes, here you go as well. You can introduce yourself a little if you'd like to.
So, my name's Isabelle, and I have been a nutritionist specialising in fertility for over 20 years. I've worked alongside Zita for most of those years, and I focus on supporting men and women, couples going through natural fertility, but also assisted fertility, specifically IVF. And I try and my job obviously is to help support, optimize egg and sperm quality and the environment and to support the medical side of IVF to enhance the outcome.
Brilliant, thank you. And today we are looking at the foundations of fertility nutrition, which is obviously, as you say, what you specialise in. So yes, just looking to start with it, what is a fertility diet?
So obviously, if there was a specific diet that people had to follow in order to have a baby, there'd be very few children in the world, and the human race would have probably died out 1,000 years ago. So whatever one might read, there actually isn't. However, there is a lot of study done this. So we know a lot about food these days, and there are certain things that we know can support fertility because, of course, hormones need to be balanced, egg and sperm quality, the environment, the endometrial environment. So actually a higher protein, lower carb, Mediterranean style diet is the diet that we tend to recommend in order to support fertility. And essentially a Mediterranean style diet is essentially it's very colourful, it's more natural, it's lower in processed foods, refined carbohydrates, high sugar foods, artificial products, and it's lower in saturated fats and things. It's also rich in essential fats because a low fat diet, which so many people follow, is not great from a fertility perspective. And protein as well, which obviously we are going to cover all of these things as we go along.
We will, and actually here is protein.
Oh, here we are, as if by magic. So protein is really, really important. So I know that protein is obviously a real buzzword for everybody today, particularly with people sort of going to the gym, lots of protein powders and stuff arrive around. Sometimes I think people focus too much on protein because actually if you think about longevity, if you think about the people who are, 90, 100 years old, they didn't really focus so much on protein actually as it happens. But from a fertility perspective, protein provides the building blocks for growth. So eggs and sperm are made of protein, and it is important to eat enough protein when you are trying to conceive. So the protein also has another role in that it supports hormone balance. So all our hormones work in connection with each other, if you like, stress hormones, sex hormones, thyroid hormones, they all work synergistically. And the more balanced the hormonal system, the more efficiently the body works. And the more efficiently the body works, the better quality everything's going to be from cognitive function and energy, but also to the way our hormones are produced, which then has a knock-on effect as to the way we ovulate, the way the quality of our eggs and our sperm. And protein supports this balance by reducing the speed at which sugar enters the bloodstream, so it keeps our blood sugar stable, which keeps our hormones more balanced. And it feeds the hormones as well. But yes, moderation, and we will be speaking about that a little bit later on.
And then next up, something very exciting, or very excited for various reasons, with this new product that has launched. So yes, if you could just talk through a little bit about the Collagen Pro, that'd be
So
great.
yeah, which of course this is not suitable for vegetarians or vegans, but essentially because, well, protein requirements are, well, protein is important for overall fertility, both male and female, and that is very accessible from diet, be it an omnivorous sort of type, an omnivore type diet, or obviously a vegetarian or a vegan or pescatarian diet. You can get, there are all sorts of different types of protein, animal, fish, plant, etc. From an IVF perspective, women going through IVF, their protein requirements are enhanced. Okay, so it is the medication's job to stimulate your ovaries to mature as many present follicles as possible in a safe environment, of course. And your first challenge, obviously, is to respond to the medication. But your job is to feed the eggs. It's like ovulating with several eggs. In nature, you would never do that. So your protein, not only your protein requirements, your nutrient requirements as well, your micronutrient, but your protein requirements particularly are increased. There is a degree of stress going around an IVF cycle, and sometimes trying to fit all the protein in via diet is very difficult because you feel quite sick actually, and it's not great for your digestion. And B, it's quite stressful wondering if you've got enough protein at breakfast or lunch or dinner. So I do often recommend protein powders as part of an IVF support. Collagen obviously actually has other benefits in that it's highly absorbable, it's highly digestible, it's actually very anti-inflammatory, it's great for gut health. So it's important for the sort of creation of cells as well, which is and because it's highly absorbable, that's very beneficial. It's also great in pregnancy as well. It may help fetal development actually, and it also can help keep joints and things more sort of bendy's the wrong word. I'm trying to think of the word, but actually it helps with joints and maternal ligaments and things during pregnancy when everything changes. Also the benefit. So this is from a grass-fed, hormone-free bovine collagen, hence why it is not recommended if you're vegetarian or vegan. It's completely tasteless. You can mix it into tea or coffee. We will obviously talk about how much of that you can drink or not later on, but it's just a very easily digestible way of getting protein in. And it's good for so many different types of obviously skin as well and hair, but actually for IVF, it's really useful to be able to include it in your daily routine if necessary, and you can increase the amount if necessary. And the amount of protein you need is really, there isn't an exact science, but it's also dependent on your follicle count. If you've got a very high follicle count, to be honest, your protein requirements are higher than if you've got a sort of follicle count in single figures. So it's not an exact science, but it's just useful to know what you can do to add on without, just to take the stress out of really.
Brilliant, thank you. And you mentioned earlier about blood sugar balance as
Yeah,
well.
so blood sugar control is actually fundamental for overall hormone balance because if we, like many of us or many people, it's very common to start with, you start your day on I don't know, bowl of Frosties. I don't know, people probably didn't even eat Frosties anymore. They weren't brought up in the 70s, but or a piece of toast and honey or whatever. It is pure carbohydrate, it's sugar, it shoots into your bloodstream very quickly, and you get what's called a sugar a peak, and then you get a dip. And so, it's very common. People go, oh God, yeah, I always feel a bit poor mid-morning and I need a coffee or I need a Diet Coke or I need a Kit Kat to pick me up. Your blood sugar ends up going up and down, okay? And actually what we eat at breakfast is one of the most important things we can do. How we eat at breakfast basically really has a role in determining how the body functions over the day. And so if you start your day on poor blood sugar, or our modern diets are very high carb, convenience foods tend to be carb based, we sort of grabbing noodles and wraps and oh, I'm being very healthy, yes, brown rice and broccoli, there's no protein in that. So it's important to add that protein because it reduces the speed at which sugar enters the bloodstream, so you don't get a sugar hit, you get like a gentle rolling hill, which has a knock-on effect. It supports thyroid function, it supports metabolism, and as I said, hormone function. So balancing our blood sugar levels is one of the most important things we can do. And in pregnancy, of course, blood sugar levels are very, very important. There is this phenomenon condition, gestational diabetes, which is on the rise. So actually, in the lead up to IVF, I think it's a really good thing, not only for the health of the hormones and the eggs and the sperm and stuff, but it's really good practice because it can help support you through a pregnancy and beyond, actually, of course. Diabetes is on a rise anyway. So balancing your blood sugar levels. And in order to balance your blood sugar levels, you eat on a reasonably regular basis, but you try and include protein and fat, actually, every time you eat.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. And we'll just look now at what can be done to improve quality of eggs and sperm as well.
So I see a lot of people who will come and say, "Oh, by the way, I've been told, I know there's nothing I can do to support to improve egg quality, or my husband's sperm wasn't great, but don't worry, we're having ICSI. I know there's nothing we can do to support it." I'm afraid I completely disagree with that. That is not true. Like in life, there is never a guarantee, of course, with anything, but there is a lot of information out there. There is a lot of study actually done, particularly on sperm, because it's generally non-invasive to collect. Obviously, for females, it's more difficult. There actually isn't a test for egg quality as it happens, but there is a lot of study done with rodents and stuff, and with sperm. Eggs and sperm are casings of strands of DNA. So, what's good or bad for the gander is good or bad for the goose, I tend to say. So the answer is yes, there is stuff that we can do to support the quality of eggs and sperm.
Brilliant. Thank you. So just looking first at egg health as well.
So it starts with what we talked about before, the following: an anti-inflammatory, doesn't have to be a Mediterranean diet, but the Mediterranean style diet, as I say, colourful, lower in saturated fats, rich in essential fats, whole grains, lean protein, nuts and seeds, etc. Fiber, very, very important actually. Balancing blood sugar levels. So those are all the things to start supporting egg health. The egg is the largest cell in single cell in the human body. It needs a lot of energy. We'll talk about that a bit later on. And coenzyme Q10, in fact, which we will be talking about later on, and a lot of people, everybody knows about CoQ10 these days. It is really important. Our own production of CoQ10, we produce it for ourselves. It's part of the energy production process right in the heart of the nucleus of the cell. But our own production peaks at sort of mid-20s, sadly, and then it starts dipping. So by the time you get to late 30s, early 40s, you need a bit more help. But also with IVF, you are not just maturing one egg. Hopefully, you're maturing several. So your energy production requirements are significantly raised. So that is very, very important. Vitamin D. Nowadays, hopefully most clinics will test you for vitamin D. There are vitamin D receptors in all reproductive cells, both male and female, and it is really, really important to have optimal vitamin D levels. In fact, studies do show that people who have optimum vitamin D levels are more likely to get pregnant via IVF. And in fact, IVF stats tend to be better in the summer, potentially because of the sun and therefore vitamin D. So vitamin D, very, very important. We are becoming a vitamin D deficient nation because we are inside, we're working, and then when we're out, we're wearing factor 50 because we don't want to get cancer or wrinkles. And that is a real problem, actually. So you can get vitamin D from food. It's not great from food. You don't get very much of it. It is really, I think, sunshine or supplements. So vitamin D is very important. Folate, as we know, generally we're recommended to take folic acid, which is the synthetic form of folate. I'm not the hugest fan of folic acid. There is a reasonably high percentage of the population that has a genetic variant, which means their bodies don't break down folic acid very well, doesn't absorb it very well, and require higher amounts. So I always recommend that people look for products that have got active folate, which is the natural active form of folic acid. It actually needs other B vitamins to function. And I know we will be talking about other nutrients to support. These are just some of the main nutrients that we know about. Omega-3. We know that omega-3 is we'll talk about sperm in a sec, is concentrated in the sperm head as it happens. For the egg, we know that it's really important for the cell membrane, but also we know it's important for the sperm DNA, therefore it has to be important for egg DNA as well. And women with high levels of omega-3, it is thought, are more likely to get pregnant. So there is definitely, it may also help support follicle count, it's anti-inflammatory, it supports hormone balance. And in my experience, unless you are supplementing with omega-3, you are probably low. And I've even taken part in a trial, and believe me, I was clearly given the placebo rather annoyingly, and I was low the whole way. So it is really important. And then going through into pregnancy, really important for fetal development, brain development, and to reduce maybe certain things like allergies and stuff. But that's another story for another day. But definitely certain nutrients really, really important to support egg health. Many more than these, of course, which we'll talk about.
Brilliant, thank you. And then for sperm health as well.
Again, very many of the same things. So, in the end, eggs and sperms, as I say, are casings for strands of DNA. Seminal fluid is very, very rich in zinc. So actually, zinc is often, when people think of male fertility and male health, zinc is often mentioned, and it's true, that there are higher requirements for zinc. As I say, omega-3, particularly DHA, which is the active form of omega-3. Is concentrated in the sperm head. It's also important for the DNA, for the shape, but also in the sperm tail. Very important for the motility as well. Vitamin D, as we know. Folate, as important for the man as for the woman. In fact, male folate and male vitamin D deficiency are potentially linked with miscarriage. So we're looking at, in the end, it takes two to create a healthy embryo. And a semen analysis tells you how many you've got, how fast they're swimming, which direction they're going in, how pretty they're looking, but it doesn't generally tell you what the quality of the inside is. So this is all really important. So ICSI is fine, which is when you inject the sperm into the egg. But if you're injecting a poor quality sperm, that's not great either. So it's really important to focus on what we know to support the healthy DNA of the sperm. Probiotics is another thing. We know that more is known sort of generally about the vaginal microbiome, which we will be speaking about later on, which is important for implantation and reducing the risk of miscarriage and that kind of thing. There is also a seminal microbiome actually, and so there are certain probiotics that have been studied with sperm health, and it reduces inflammation, it improves motility, and potentially DNA structure as well. So actually, because when the microbiome is impaired, wherever it is around the body, it can give rise to increased inflammation, and inflammation is a problem in life.
Okay, thank you. So just a quick overview, just of the key nutrients you would say for reproductive health.
So obviously, in an ideal world, there is plenty of nutrients, but certainly from a female perspective, okay, well, for the male, most of these as well. But so folate, which is the active form of folic acid, which requires B6 and B12 and actually B2 as well in order to function efficiently. Vitamin D, we've discussed. Zinc is important for so many different aspects of body function and immunity, etc. Selenium is a potent antioxidant, so it's really important for the DNA of both male and female fertility. It's very important. Also, it helps in the mid-tail piece of the sperm, so it helps the sperm swim along. Iodine, after the thyroid, the ovaries have probably got the highest concentration of iodine. So iodine is actually really important for egg quality, which is another potential issues with vegetarian and vegans. In getting enough iodine in the diet. So it's really important just to be aware of that. It's not that uncommon to be low in iodine actually. Calcium and magnesium are both really important. Magnesium is very quickly used up during stressful times, and it is not uncommon for people to be lowish in magnesium these days actually. And omega-3, as we've said, these are just some of the basics, which is why I'm never a fan of just taking single nutrients all the time, because you end up taking so many, and there are already so many around, but actually in a complex they sort of complement each other and they often work well together, and you don't always need mega doses of anything in order to create a good sort of harmony and a good complex.
Brilliant, thank you. And we'd say obviously this isn't definitive, but it's generally great to try and do sort of 3 months before, isn't it, if you're able?
Yeah, so the maturation cycle, if you like, of eggs and sperm is sort of roughly between 2 and 4 months, if you like. So we sort of look at about 3 months. I mean, realistically, certainly studies show, and I have seen, and you can see it with semen analyses more than anything really. But you can see results and improvements in a shorter amount of time. And although when people are planning, that might be the optimal time. And when you're planning for IVF, look at egg collection and sperm collection, not the beginning of the cycle, because actually the egg and sperm collection is 2 or 3 weeks, depending on what kind of a protocol you're on, is can be a few weeks later, and people get a bit, sometimes it stresses people out. They go, oh, I've got enough time, I've got enough time. Always add on those bits. But also, it's never too late. I mean, I've seen people coming to me sort of when they start stimulation the next day or when they've already started stimulation. I'll be 100% honest. I can't guarantee that we can make improvements, but certainly it's never too late. We can look at increasing the protein at that time because that's when the stimulation starts and that's when your protein requirements go sky high. We can look at optimizing blood flow and improving sort of the chances of implantation, maybe reducing inflammation. So it's never too late, but in an ideal world, ideally 2 to 3 months, I would say. And what we look at, as I say, right at the beginning, I said, if people had to follow a specific diet, clearly there isn't one. I'm not a fan of removing everything from the diet and trying to be the nutritional equivalent of a monk or a nun. I feel that is extremely stressful, which adds its own issues. And in my experience, for people I've seen, not always beneficial, to be honest, because you hold this sort of tension in that is really not necessary. We all need some treats. So ideally, to me, it's look at the good stuff. Look at increasing your antioxidant status. So antioxidants are really important. I know there was, and I didn't use that word when we were talking about eggs or sperm, but antioxidants, which are zinc, selenium, vitamin C, vitamin E, those are all antioxidant nutrients. But from a food perspective, the actual pigment of brightly coloured fruit and veg, they are so important. We know that for females, reproductively older mice, fed antioxidants and end up with better egg quality. Because there's been so much study done on sperm, we know that obviously on sperm, antioxidants are super important, and that there is and the colours. I mean, just for instance, with the Mediterranean diet, tomato puree. I mean, studies are done with that for its lycopene to improve sperm quality. And I've seen it as well in some of my clients. So very easy things you can do. So increasing the colour, ensuring enough protein, trying to swap maybe refined carbs for whole grains, good fats, and reducing at least bad foods. It doesn't mean you can't ever have a treat. Actually, dark chocolate is fantastic. It's a rich source of magnesium, L-arginine, it's anti-inflammatory. So there are some benefits. And sometimes you need a bit of what you fancy just to give yourself a break. So it's all about moderation and to me, it's if you can get the good stuff in, protein and color every time you eat, and you look at good, enough liquid and reducing alcohol and caffeine, both male and female preconceptual caffeine consumption in high levels can be linked with miscarriage. It can damage reproductive cells. It is really important that both of you do that. But those are really important. Stress, we all have a degree of stress, so you're not going to take the stress away. But what you can do is focus how you manage the way the body responds to stress via diet, by balancing your blood sugar levels as your start, by eating anti-inflammatory foods, increasing magnesium-rich foods and stuff. And from an inflammation perspective, again, the Mediterranean diet has anti-inflammatory potential, which means, so there's certain foods that have pro-inflammatory links with, so we try and avoid them, reduce them, and increase the anti-inflammatory foods like essential fatty acids and brightly coloured fruit and veg and that kind of thing. Fibrous foods as well. Fibre can reduce inflammation, of course.
Brilliant. And yes, you've obviously mentioned
Ah.
antioxidants and inflammation. So yes, so these are the key nutrients that you...
Yeah, absolutely. Antioxidants are actually anti-inflammatory. So omega-3, very anti-inflammatory. It's we know that. I mean, it's good for heart, it can reduce cholesterol, blood pressure. It's good for all sorts of aspects. It's good for our joints. It's good for skin health, etc. And as I say, most of us don't probably have enough. So that's absolutely it. But then our antioxidants, the general antioxidants that we've heard about, vitamin E, vitamin A. Vitamin A is always a bone of contention. A lot of people, because we are told, obviously, that high intake of vitamin A, or vitamin A should never be had if you're trying to get pregnant or if you're pregnant. That is not strictly true, in that vitamin A is actually extremely important for fetal development and for hormone balance, etc. But yes, too much of a certain type of supplemental vitamin A, or even in liver and stuff, the retinol vitamin A is indeed dangerous in pregnancy. But beta carotene, which is the vegetarian precursor to vitamin A, which is found in things like carrots, red, yellow, and orange peppers, butternut squash, orange, yellowy foods, that will convert to vitamin A as and when the body needs it. And when the stores are full, the conversion stops, so you don't overdose on it. So it's really important. And so all our products, for instance, contain vitamin A in the beta carotene form, which is perfectly safe. But it is a really important antioxidant to include. Magnesium is also one of its benefits. It's important for so many aspects. Lots of people take it for sleep, for instance, and for stress reduction, which is great. It's also great for DNA synthesis. So from a fertility perspective, it's good for the actual DNA of the sperm and the eggs and stuff. It may support implantation, but it's also very anti-inflammatory. So it's as I said, magnesium is a big one. And I think a lot of people are quite aware of magnesium these days.
Brilliant. And another one to look at is CoQ10.
So CoQ10 is okay. So it's an energy provider. It's a potent antioxidant. It's part of the energy production process in the nucleus, right in the mitochondria, right in the heart of the nucleus of the cell. Um, so it's been studied quite a lot with fertility, but male and female fertility. It comes in two forms actually, which I think we're going to talk about. Oh, it comes in two forms. Great. So ubiquinone is the traditional oxidized version of CoQ10. This means it needs converting in the body. It needs converting to its active form. And when you convert, obviously you always lose bits along the way, plus you use up certain nutrients to convert. So it takes up energy by itself, actually, and you always lose a bit along the way. Ubiquinol is the body ready active form that hits the ground running. Now, as we get older, our own conversion ability does decrease. Our cell turnover is slow, everything's slower as we get older. So I do tend to recommend, particularly as we get older, that people really do focus on ubiquinol rather than ubiquinone, because they will use it more efficiently. But I mean, anybody can use ubiquinol, of course, and it is great for egg quality. It's good for all aspects of sperm quality, count, motility, morphology, even DNA. So we have to assume it's the same for female eggs as well. But and for the energy, obviously for the sperm to swim, but particularly I would be recommending coenzyme Q10 if there are any issues from the male factor. For females, particularly if egg quality is potentially in question, or if females are maybe over 35 at least. But even young women going through IVF, I think it is important to add in the CoQ10, because the likelihood is, that's not always the case, but the likelihood is if you are young, you may have a higher follicle count. So actually you need tons of energy. So although hopefully the eggs are going to be young and, potentially okay, good quality, it's never bad to have something good to add to it, but it's the energy that's really important. And the combination of antioxidant support, reducing cellular damage, etc., and the energy is what they think helps CoQ10 support better success for IVF.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. And just before we move into specific supplements, just a quick mention about mindset and the role that plays on the body.
Yeah, so the mind-body connection is so important. And you can think yourself ill. We know that, when you're anxious, your tummy goes weird, you feel a bit faint sometimes, it's really strong, and it can have a sort of physical effect on the body. And so it's really, and so people, whatever people can find to support, because we live in a stressful world. IVF is stressful, actually. Fertility is stressful, or infertility, whatever you want to call it. It's very stressful. So you can't control the stress around you, but what you can do is support the way your body works. So, some people might find that meditation, or, music, or yoga, or exercise, obviously the exercise does need to be moderate. High intensity exercise, and this goes for men and women, not so great from a fertility perspective. It increases inflammation, it increases cortisol, it heats up the body. It does various things. It's not ideal. Moderate exercise, very much recommended. And so it's really doing what works for you rather than focusing on stress itself. I see too many people being stressed because they can't focus on manage their stress. They know they're stressed, and that stresses them out even more. So it's really just accepting what your stress is around you, putting into place what you can, and using things like, well, I'm stressed, so I know that, I need to try and have a few minutes or do this. Take some magnesium. I mean, that is often my first recommendation, is add in extra magnesium. There's often not a huge amount of magnesium in a multivitamin. Multivitamins are designed to be safe to be taken on a daily basis, and they don't tend to have mega doses in, otherwise they stop being multivitamins because they're not suitable for everybody, or most people, because everybody's different. So adding things on, particularly magnesium, you can take a reasonably punchy dose of magnesium, but you need to be a bit careful. And you can dip in and out of it, and most people find it helps them sleep. It can remove some of the anxiety. Do you know what? Just by balancing your blood sugar levels, just by having protein at breakfast, that's a start. That's one of the most important things you can do to support adrenal balance, and our adrenals are our stress glands. So it's looking at, the whole body sort of function as well, not just the food you put in your body.
Brilliant, thank you. So just a quick look then at female supplements for IVF preparation. So this is our kind of ultimate kit that we would recommend if you want to throw everything at it, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, this is all singing, all dancing, and not everybody needs everything. But for me, the basics for anybody going through IVF would be always a multivitamin formula to start with. As I mentioned earlier, I'm not so keen on just having zinc here and folate there and this and that. You're better to have it in a complex that they will complement each other, and it's easier to take. But also, you're not only do your protein requirements go up in during IVF, your actual micronutrient requirements, because eggs are, and sperm, they are casings for strands of DNA, and DNA requires folate, B12, B6, zinc, selenium, vitamin C. We need all these nutrients, vitamin D. So taking a multivitamin helps. However well we're eating, we're trying to ovulate with 15 eggs or whatever it is. So we need a lot more, basically, because we also still need to function and go to work and walk around and stress and worry and all of those types of things. So a multivitamin and omega-3 is always my basic. Generally, depending on the time of year, vitamin D, depending on people's lifestyles, you need more in winter. It's not one size doesn't fit all with vitamin D. And I would always highly recommend it, if possible, get your vitamin D tested before you do IVF, because then it's easier to dose it. And you're aware, I've seen people with stupendously low vitamin D with no idea that their vitamin D is low. You can't tell. You feel better when it comes up again, actually. So we have in here, we have an antioxidant support, the VitaFem boost. So increased antioxidants is always important. Omega-3, as I say, the inositol and folate. Inositol is more specifically sort of aligned with women who have PCOS to support ovulation and egg quality, but actually it's present in follicular fluid, so it does help with egg maturation and egg quality. N-acetylcysteine, NAC, is a potent antioxidant. It has anti-inflammatory properties, it's got lots of benefits. It's also been studied with recurrent miscarriage, and it may reduce the risk of recurrent miscarriage by reducing inflammation, actually, reducing oxidative stress, but it also supports the vaginal microbiome, and it works very well alongside a probiotic like Femsieve, which I think we are going to talk about the vaginal microbiome, because although this isn't necessarily anything to do with egg quality, it's very much to do with supporting implantation.
Okay, brilliant. And just there's a couple of questions on supplements.
Yes, ask away.
So on the supplement side, what would you recommend if not IVF, so just trying to conceive?
Yeah. Well, it depends on age, it depends on if there are any issues, but a basic would be a good multivitamin with active ingredients, folate, all the B vitamins, zinc, selenium, or iodine, all of that. Vitamin D. Now, as I said, I mean, from our products, VitaFem has got 1,000 IUs of vitamin D. Most of our multivitamins have got 1,000 IUs of vitamin D. It may or may not be enough, and it certainly depends on the time of year, and lifestyle, skin tone, that kind of thing. So a good multivitamin and omega-3 is always my starting point. And if somebody is vegetarian or vegan, there are some very good algae-based omega-3s out there. Try and find the one which has got the highest concentration of active ingredients and take it, because your diets are definitely going to be lacking in omega-3. And that's make sure you take something appropriate throughout pregnancy. Those would be my very basics, but it's very much dependent on, if you're over 35, you may need a bit more antioxidant support. So this is where the ubiquinol can come into place. We also have something called alpha lipoic acid, which is a potent antioxidant, which has actually been studied with older women going through IVF and improved pregnancy outcomes, actually. NAC or antioxidant support. It's if you've got endometriosis or PCOS, then there are other things that come into play. So that there isn't a one size fits all. It's very much dependent on your lifestyle. If you have very heavy periods, for instance, if you are prone to anemia, iron is really important for egg quality, and in a multivitamin there is not a huge amount of iron, otherwise it stops being a multivitamin. So it is really important to check your iron levels, and if your iron is low, to support additional iron, actually. That's really, and that also supports blood flow, of course, because iron is how blood is, blood is, and iron is important, which takes the nutrients around the body. The better the blood flow, the better the nutrient flow. So but the very basics, so good quality multivitamin and omega-3, those would be my starting point, and good quality ones with active ingredients. You may as well get something that your body's going to respond to.
Brilliant. Yeah. And just, you mentioned PCOS there. Someone has said, do you recommend the use of inositol? I have PCOS. And if so, what's the recommended dose?
So yes, I do. Myo-inositol has been studied quite a lot with women with PCOS. And it enhances, what it can do is it reduces inflammation, because PCOS is a pro-inflammatory condition. It can improve insulin sensitivity. It can reduce testosterone levels. It can improve ovulation and the quality of the eggs. The studies, the recommended dose for PCOS is 4 grams a day. The Zita West one is 1.5 teaspoons, and that gives you 4 grams, and it's got 200 micrograms of folate. So inositol is often recommended with folate or folic acid. Actually, women with PCOS and are 90-something% of women with PCOS are vitamin D deficient. So think about the vitamin D, but also you are potentially more likely to have one of the MTHFR mutations with this genetic variant, whereby your body doesn't break down, absorb folic acid. So folate, in my opinion, particularly if you've got PCOS or endo, actually is really, really important.
Okay.
Not tolerated.
And just on the previous question, just about supplements to take, not through IVF, the age is 43. So if you're trying IVF from 43.
So if you're trying, so again, you can be very fertile in your 40s, to be fair, but generally your egg quality is maybe not as good as it might have been. So therefore it needs a bit more help. So I would certainly say definitely the Canica ubiquinol. I mean, and ubiquinol, not ubiquinone. It's really important in your 40s to go for the active form. And our recommended dose is 2 a day. It's 200 milligrams, because that's been found to be the optimal dose. Going through IVF, I would potentially add another one, by the way, going through the IVF cycle. But take them together, take them separately, because the body can only use so much at a time. So you just get more bang for your buck, really. You get a better absorption. You would probably benefit from alpha lipoic acid as well, I would say, or another antioxidant complex, the VitaFem Boost. But actually, we haven't got the alpha lipoic acid. I don't think we've got a photo of it. I'm not sure, but that and the NAC are great to support, both of them to support egg quality. So yeah, just and vitamin D, and probably extra folate. A lot of women who are in their 40s are recommended that the medical sort of departments that tend to give you higher doses of folic acid. As I prefer folate, but I might double the folate. Rather than just having the 400 micrograms, I might add extra folate as well. Actually, inositol and folate would be quite good as well, to be fair.
Yeah. So we'll be coming on to male supplements next, but just someone's asked, how much CoQ10 should a woman take in her 40s and a man take in his 60s?
Well, I mean, sort of how long is a piece of string? But for both of you, 40s and 60s, take ubiquinol, not ubiquinone, because the conversion is not so good. Um, there is no specific dose of CoQ10 as it happens. I mean, a lot of IVF clinics will recommend 600 milligrams of the traditional form because that is what has been studied. You need less of the ubiquinol. If you're not going through IVF, you may not need so much. I would take, and it depends with the man in his 60s, for instance, if it's to do with sperm, to improve sperm, if there are any issues with sperm. Certainly studies that I've read, but they are done with the traditional form of CoQ10, 200 milligrams, great improvement, 400 milligrams, way better. So a little bit more is probably recommended, but you don't have to go sort of hell for leather. I might say, yeah, maybe for the woman in her 40s, 100 milligrams 2 or 3 times a day, maybe twice a day should be enough, but 3 times, and maybe for the man, maybe 3 times a day, a little bit more probably, because our cell turnover, everything is slower when we're older, to be fair. So, but I can't give you an exact dose, I'm afraid.
That's right. And then just looking at male supplements as well. So again, this is the same kind of.
So yeah, so this is the all singing, all dancing one as well for the male. Again, a basic for a man, for anybody, if they're going through IVF, even if their sperm seems fine, I would say just belt and braces. With IVF, you have one shot per cycle, one egg collection and one sperm collection, so make it count. Um, Good quality multivitamin with active ingredients, folate, B12, B6, zinc, selenium, all of that kind of thing, and omega-3. Those are the very basics, and potentially vitamin D, depending on the time of year, of course. So this particular one also has, we've got Vitamin Boost, which is an antioxidant complex. It's got extra vitamin C and zinc and selenium. It's a little bit more concentrated if there are issues. It's got the Canica ubiquinol because we know that ubiquinol has got lots of benefits for sperm, all aspects of sperm quality, including the morphology. And the VitaSeed Pro, which I've had some great results with recently, actually. Particularly, I would recommend where there is low count and motility and morphology, I would throw that in because that sort of is amino acids and D-aspartic acid, which can improve testosterone levels and stuff. Actually, the VitaSeed Pro would probably be good for the man in his 60s, I would say, because testosterone levels can dwindle as we get older. The Mensieve in this is a probiotic to support the seminal microbiome that we talked about. And I think we talk about it a bit later on, but it has some really great benefits. And the psyllium husk is basically a fiber supplement, which has got not necessarily any nutritional value, but fiber can be anti-inflammatory. It supports the probiotic. That's why it's there. It enhances the action of a probiotic because probiotics feed on fiber.
Brilliant. And we have spoken about magnesium earlier, but just a little focus on it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan of magnesium, and I tend to take it most nights. I sleep way better with it. Most people do. It's sort of known as nature's tranquilizer. It's very calming. Just, from a practical perspective, we use up because we live in a world which tends to be highly stressed. Do we get enough magnesium from our food? Do we eat enough magnesium-rich foods? So, nuts and seeds, whole grains, green leafy veg, maybe not. Particularly when we're stressed, magnesium is one of the quickest nutrients. And if you have anything from potential to be sort of constipated or have period pain, PMS, any headaches, any muscle aches or twitches, any, the tension that you hold here, anxiety, even anxiety and depression and that kind of thing often are linked with low magnesium levels actually. And again, like most nutrients, a multivitamin is designed to be taken on a daily basis. Something like magnesium, you think, oh God, that sounds like me. Maybe I should give it a try. But how long do I take it for? Give it a go for a month or something, see how you feel. If you feel better, that's great. You don't need the same dose for the rest of your life. You might go, well, I'm going to try this. I'm feeling better. Yeah, I'm a bit more relaxed. Blah, blah, blah. Maybe I'll reduce it and I'll take it every other day, or I'll have a week on, a week off, or I just take it as and when I feel I need it. So it's quite flexible. I sort of have it in my sort of nutritional first aid kit, which is sort of, vitamin D's in there, things that are just useful. Milk thistle, obviously if I want to have a glass of wine, that kind of thing. But certainly magnesium, and different magnesiums have different absorbabilities. The Zita West one is marine magnesium, so it's derived from the Irish Sea, so it's rich in minerals which support its absorption. Magnesium, that also, yeah, women with PCOS and women with endometriosis are quite likely to be low in magnesium, interestingly enough. And particularly, the intense period pains and things with endometriosis NAC can help with that, but certainly magnesium can really help with that as well. And magnesium, as I say, has an anti-inflammatory role, and it benefits the quality as well. So I think it's just something that is a lot of people are low in, and you can get, there are some really good products out there, but make sure that whatever you get is a good one, is a good active one, not a sort of generic, poorly absorbed one.
Okay, and we've just had a question here about what are your thoughts on ashwagandha versus magnesium?
Well, you can take them both. They're both completely different things. So ashwagandha is an adaptogen, sort of also called Indian ginseng, and it's got a load of benefits. It's very calming. It's great. It's great for sperm quality, actually. Probably good for egg quality because of that, and probably for its adaptogenic qualities, it's anti-inflammatory. An adaptogen basically supports adrenal health and can help balance these, that sort of this sort of thing that's going on with your hormones, the stress levels. But magnesium is derived from food. So generally you can take both things because they don't interfere with each other. They work together. In fact, the one thing about ashwagandha is not appropriate in pregnancy. There is not enough knowledge, and although there are some things that say, oh, it's fine in pregnancy, there is potential risk with miscarriage and stuff. So prior to conception, it's fine. For men, it's absolutely fine. But be aware of the fact that it may be something that wouldn't be recommended in pregnancy. Herbs, you've got to be careful with. I mean, you've got to be careful with everything in pregnancy, but when you're trying to conceive, you need to be aware of that, because sometimes what you don't want to do is go, oh, I'll take it and I'll stop it dead, because your body doesn't always thank you for that. It's used to it. To suddenly stop it, it's not always the ideal thing to do.
Okay. And then another focus on probiotics for fertility as
Yeah.
well.
So we all know about the gut microbiome, which is, by the way, super important. And it all starts with the gut, how your gut functions, supports the way you digest your food, the way you absorb certain nutrients, etc., etc. It also can, if your gut function is impaired, it can give rise to quite a lot of inflammation. But the gut and the vaginal microbiome talk to each other. And in the vaginal microbiome, there are some specific organisms that you don't tend to find in a gut probiotic. Some of the lactobacillus, particularly crispatus. So there are various lactobacillus species that are proliferate in the vaginal microbiome. Crispatus seems to be the most dominant, and so any probiotics designed to support the vaginal microbiome, I would hope that it would have crispatus in it as well as other things. They're all a bit different. But the vaginal microbiome is important to it's our sort of it's our garrison, if you like. It's our army to stop things like, bacterial vaginosis, uroplasma, basically infections invading. It's if you have a good percentage, more 90% of dominant lactobacillus, it will create an acidic environment, which means that pathogenic bacteria, harmful bacteria, can't proliferate. So the pH should be more acidic in the vagina. Everywhere else in the body, we like it to be more alkaline. The vaginal microbiome needs to be more acidic. But the vaginal microbiome, the health of which is influential in supporting implantation, but also reducing miscarriage risk. Because if it is impaired and infection can take hold or whatever, it can be linked with miscarriage. So we nowadays, there are so many antibiotics everywhere. Not only are we given antibiotics if we, for everything from acne to UTIs to whatever it might be. Even if you don't take antibiotics, they are in the food chain. We are also bombarded. Everything is anti-bac. So all we have all around us is these sprays that get rid of everything good as well as everything bad. So we're too clean. And then there's all these cleaning products that are not great, sort of feminine hygiene products. They're all things that can be actually detrimental, and they can affect the environment, and particularly when you're going through IVF, but naturally. And again, with a probiotic, it doesn't need to be taken forever and a day. The studies are really interesting, and they show, particularly with the organisms that are found in the FemSieve, um, really great improvements after 5 weeks, which is one pot. There are 34 probably, sorry, capsules in a pot. After 10 weeks, almost a 90, more than a 90% improvement. And so I tend to say, take it, maybe for 3 months, and then you don't have to take it daily, just maybe 2 or 3 times a week or something. It's not something, but it is worth, and most of us probably could do with an MOT anyway, like our cars every year we could do with a bit of a zhuzh, which means that we could take a probiotic for the gut every year. And there's always things we can do just to sort of replenish our stores, because life will wear them away. But certainly, the other thing with these probiotics, so for instance, with endometriosis and with PCOS, there is a direct link with an impaired microbiome, actually. So it would certainly be something. And these probiotics reduce inflammation as well. So they do reduce pro-inflammatory cytokines, which is important. But essentially, your first challenge obviously is to create a good quality embryo and to implant it, but you need to implant it. And if the environment, and that includes the endometrial environment, of course, is impaired, so it can be really useful. Just, it's sort of a belt and braces approach, actually, really. And the FemSieve is appropriate throughout pregnancy if necessary. There are quite a lot of women who suffer from thrush in pregnancy, so it can be helpful to support that, and it's perfectly safe. If it may not be necessary, but it is, if it is needed.
Brilliant, thank you. And then we also have the male probiotic as well.
So the men one is for the seminal microbiome, as we discussed, which again reduces inflammation, it reduces the sort of the toxic load, etc. And this one is a 21-day cycle. So there are 21 capsules per pot, and it's designed to be taken for 3 weeks, then have a break, and then maybe you could do it for another 3 weeks. But actually, the results are reasonably long lasting, and a mobility, I think, is improved by sixfold, I think, after 3 weeks. DNA is improved, inflammation is reduced. So it's something that can be useful to be done 2 or 3 times or something, just for a belt and braces again.
Yeah, brilliant, thank you. So then just looking at embryo transfer preparation, we did have a question earlier. I will be in a minute or so, I'll go back through all the questions, so I'll make sure they've all been covered.
Of
But
course.
someone had asked about supplements specifically for transfer.
So for transfer, I mean, blood flow is extremely important. So we look at blood flow. That is important for egg quality as well, of course, because, the better the blood flow, the better the nutrient flow to the ovaries. But also the better the blood flow, the better the nutrient flow to the endometrium. So I often recommend things like beetroot juice or pomegranate juice, nettle tea. There are various things, acupuncture. There's lots of really great things that can support blood flow. Inflammation. So inflammation is a big problem in our modern world, of course. So anti-inflammatory, certain foods have more pro-inflammatory potential. If you are at all gluten sensitive, if for instance, you eat a sandwich and you bloat for 3 hours, or you have a bowl of pasta that you go, I love it, but I'm not going to be great for an hour afterwards. Just go, okay, I'm going to avoid this for a while. I mean, I will often say avoid for a while. If you've got any thyroid issues, you've got hypothyroidism, stuff like that, endo, there, fairly recent study came out whereby there was positive links with both dairy and gluten and endometriosis. I will often recommend, if there's multiple either miscarriage or potentially there's sort of implantation failures and stuff, it's just like, just give it a go. It's only a few months out of your life. It may not be necessary, but what if it is? So gluten is one of the most pro-inflammatory nutrients. Dairy can be, depending on the person. That is not, it's one size doesn't fit all with any of them, to be fair. Red meat can be pro-inflammatory. Sugar is very pro-inflammatory. That's something to be careful of. Artificial sweeteners, are really pro-inflammatory, and ultra processed foods also really pro-inflammatory. So things like trans fats and stuff like that, found in crisps and things, and certain sort of commercial biscuits and things, very pro-inflammatory. So it's following, it's having the essential fats. Omega-3 is anti-inflammatory. The antioxidants are anti-inflammatory, brightly colored fruit and veg. So it's looking at reducing that inflammation, but back to magnesium again and all of that kind of thing. The vaginal environment that we've just spoken about. So those are the really important things for embryo transfer preparation. Whole grains have been found to enhance implantation. Vitamin E is really important. Selenium, folate, super important for implantation. Beta carotene. So again, it's taking all the supplements we discussed. Actually, CoQ10 as well. Although CoQ10 is more sort of associated with egg quality and stuff, it may support blood flow. It is anti-inflammatory, and it may support the endometrial environment and support implantation. However, although there is no known toxicity with this, I do tend to say stop it at embryo transfer, just because nobody can guarantee that it's safe. I mean, and it will have done its job. The other thing is that if you were taking, the sort of all singing, all dancing Zita West package with the VitaFem boost, I would tend to say that. I tend to say stop the VitaFem boost at implantation, not egg collection, but wait until implantation, because it contains pine bark extract, which again, there's not enough study done, so we can't give it the green light. Lots of people obviously taking these products and having a natural conception, and then you just stop what you don't need when you find out you're pregnant. But essentially, you're looking at blood flow, and you're looking at support, at drinking enough water. Obviously, caffeine needs to be out of the window, alcohol out of the window, that kind of thing, soft drinks and things like that. But it's really the main difference with embryo transfer preparation and a fresh IVF, if you like, or going for egg collection and then going to the embryo transfer, is you don't need so much protein. Everything else is really the same. There isn't one sort of particular stage of this. You still need to follow the same sort of food.
Brilliant, thank you. And then before we move on and go through the questions, it's just the 2-week wait. So this is
That's the
such a
awful
hard
time.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, terrible time. Really, the 2-week wait, the adjustments would be any supplements, such as from our products, the CoQ10 and the VitaFem Boost would be the ones I would say that you should just make sure that I would stop them. I mean, the inositol, if you want to have that, it has actually been studied with pregnancy. You may not need it. If anybody is taking anything like, obviously things like ashwagandha we've just discussed, anything herbal that may not be suitable in pregnancy, things like turmeric. Now, lots of people take turmeric because it's anti-inflammatory. Certainly shouldn't be taken as a supplement in pregnancy, but I would stop it probably several days, if not a week or two, before embryo transfer, because there are a couple of studies that would indicate it might thin the endometrial lining. So it's just being aware of that. But in the 2-week wait, the main things to do is to avoid the foods that are not recommended in pregnancy. So you're not going to have a sushi fest or gorge on gorgonzola and stuff. It's eating foods that are not unsafe in pregnancy. Otherwise, it's carrying on, and anything you can do to sort of maintain mind-body connection and just living a normal life. Don't start spring cleaning your house or climbing up Mount Kilimanjaro or anything like that. Don't start training for a marathon. Obviously, it's really keeping things. No, really, the only exercise I would say would be just walking. I wouldn't be doing exercise and stuff, because an embryo the implantation takes place over the 2 to 4 days after transfer. But initially it is a natural conception takes place in the fallopian tube, so it starts from inside and wafts in. IVF one comes from the outside. It's very rude. It gets shoved in, and then it's just left to its own devices. So you want to be a bit gentle with it.
Okay, and someone's just said, did you say to stop CoQ10 during the 2-week wait?
Yeah, I mean, only because, as I said, there is actually no known toxicity with CoQ10, and it has actually been studied in pregnancy, but not until 20 weeks. So it may reduce the risk of preeclampsia, but in early pregnancy, there is not enough evidence that anybody can give you a guarantee. So that's why we say stop it.
Okay, thank you. So I will just go back over the questions that we have had come
Yeah,
in.
sure.
So the first one is is it fair to give up on my own eggs as I had an ovary removed when aged 11, have tried IVF twice now, a full-on medicated round and a mini IVF, both failed. Considering donor eggs, which the doctors have said would take the chances from 15% to 70%. She has low AMH and high FSH, and I've just seen in another one, she's age 31.
Gosh, that's a tough call, isn't it? I mean, that's a decision that only you can make. I mean, I don't know obviously what your preparation has been in the lead up to your IVFs, whether you've done any of the things we've talked about or supported the nutrient sort of intake and stuff. That's a decision that only you can make. But and the doctor, because obviously I'm a nutritionist, I'm not a doctor, so I can't advise on whether it's possible to collect more. I don't know how many eggs you've had collected actually. I mean, you're not alone in only having one ovary, to be fair, but if you've got a sort of low egg reserve, it depends how many eggs they can collect on the quality. So that's but look, much as I can't advise on that, we do offer free 20-minute nutrition chats. If you wanted to chat, you'd be very welcome to book in and we could have a quick chat about it. And I can give you, we can go into a little your thing in a little bit more depth. We could have a chat about it. I mean, I can't say that I can give you a definitive answer, but for sure.
Okay, yeah, and she's just saying the first round was 3 eggs, only 2 put in, and the mini only 1, and had did everything that's kind of been said. But yes, I'd recommend. I just put up here the QR code on the screen here. You can have the 15-minute, like you say, you can go into a bit more detail to discuss as well.
And I think, it's worth looking at every option, before you move forward, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Yes, so if you want to, if you scan that the QR code there, then we can look further. Or we also you can email at any point as well to ask any questions to our email address. If you head to the website, you can see that. But yes, thank you for asking a question. We have another here. Is about most protein powders safe for use during IVF, or do they need to be specific? And then the same person has also asked if pre-workout significantly affects sperm health.
So protein powders, some of them are, it depends what they're made of. I tend to recommend steering clear of pea and soya-based protein powders. Back in the 50s, they studied peas as contraceptives. Peas contain a compound called M-xylohydroquinone, which was actually a rubbish contraceptive, I have to tell you. But it did have some contraceptive potential. And when you're going for something like IVF, then you don't want to have anything that might be an issue. And soya, again, is not recommended, from a fertility perspective. So those would be the two that I would try and avoid just in case. Grass-fed, hormone-free whey protein is just pure whey protein. That should not be a problem. It depends what's in the protein powders. Some of them have got tons of additives. Collagen peptides powder, like, R1, there, things, that would be a good thing. So try and get as clean a protein powder as possible, I would, because assuming this is for the female, I don't know, but this is purely, your ovaries are at the gym. So this is purely to support. It's not trying to build muscle, and all that kind of thing. Although having said that, there's a lot of creatine in protein powders, and that actually has thought to have some fertility benefits. So, actually it's okay.
Yeah, thank you. And then another one, I've been taking progesterone as part of an IVF cycle. Digestion slows right down, so I feel bloated and constipated. Already do low carb, high protein. Is there anything else that you'd suggest?
I've just realized that I didn't answer the other question about the
Oh, sorry.
pre-workout.
Yes,
Sorry, and I will do that one.
Thanks.
Depending on what it is, I think it's impossible to know really. What it is. So very aggressive, sort of heavy, sort of lots of heating up and stuff, not so great. It just really, the answer is I can't, I'm not quite sure what the question is. So if you want to either ask more or, I'll try and answer it. Sorry, you do that other one, Sophie.
Yes, so
Sorry.
progesterone is making her digestion slow,
Constipated. Yeah.
bloated, and already does low carb, high protein. So is there anything else you'd suggest?
Yeah, I mean, this is where the psyllium husk or some kind of fiber can be really, really, it's not, you are not alone. Progesterone is very constipating. So fiber is really important too, because obviously low carb, tends to mean low fiber. So you can use something like psyllium husk. You can soak linseeds overnight. Whole flax seeds or linseeds are the same thing, but whole ones. You soak them overnight. They form what's called a mucilage, and then you drink it the next morning. That can and chase it with water. Drink enough water. Magnesium is another one. So there are a few things that you can do. I would certainly consider a fiber supplement. It's yeah, it's not uncommon. It's really uncomfortable. Try magnesium if you're not already doing it, and try either psyllium husk or soaked linseeds. You might find that helps. It's a problem that progesterone's not. It doesn't affect everybody, but it can affect, and it's quite uncomfortable.
Okay, thank you. Someone else here has been making smoothies with Greek yogurt, berries, banana, honey, and flax instead of a mid-morning sweet snack, but is blended still okay? Or would you
Yeah.
recommend?
Make sure that your Greek yogurt is Greek and not Greek style, because the Greek has got more protein, and then it's not the 0%. Low fat dairy is not so great for egg quality. And and make it not too big. That's the thing. If you have something that big, if you deconstruct something and you go, oh my God, I don't think I could eat all of that in one go, don't drink it, because it's easier to drink than it is to eat. And often smoothies will still have less protein than sugary bits. So just be a little bit aware of it, and maybe have a smaller amount with half a banana if it's a mid-morning snack, you know. But it's fine to blend it, yes.
Brilliant, thank you. Someone else here has had gestational diabetes before. So if pregnant, does the body need your typical carbs like rice and potatoes, or is it okay to just eat protein, fats, fruit and veg and get your carbs from the fruit and veg instead?
It's so yes, gestational diabetes, if you've had it once, you have a higher risk of having it again. Inositol and folate could be helpful for that. Actually, it has been studied with reducing the risk of gestational diabetes, as has magnesium, I have to tell you. With the carbs, you need a certain amount of fiber, but you can use things like pulses, of course, beans, lentils, and chickpeas, because they are a mixture of carb and protein. So you can get, obviously, yeah, potatoes and rice. Potatoes, I wouldn't. Sweet potatoes would be something you could have in moderation. Whole grain basmati rice in moderate. There are a few things you could consider, but make sure your carb portions are smaller. But I wouldn't be completely I mean, use pulses and beans as carbs as well, because actually that will give you some protein, but you're missing out on fiber. And funnily enough, a low fiber diet is also linked with gestational diabetes. Taking a probiotic might help. That may also reduce the risk of gestational diabetes. That walking after meals, you probably do all this already, but walking, within half an hour or so of walking for 10 minutes, that's great for reducing diabetes. There are various things you can do. But yes, certainly protein every time, but it doesn't mean you have to be completely carb less, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you. We've had a couple of caffeine questions. So
Yeah.
what would you consider high levels of caffeine, or would you recommend?
Well, the studies are done on 200 milligrams of caffeine. So, I mean, some coffee shop caffeines have got more than 300 per cup. And again, one size never fits all. So I would say keep it to below 200 milligrams. However, I tend to say one coffee, one coffee, maybe a cup of tea a day, or two teas or something like that. If for the man, and for the woman, but for the woman, I would, also don't forget that your body is being bombarded with all these hormones. Your liver has to detoxify all these. So although actually caffeine or coffee, not so much the caffeine, actually the coffee can actually support liver function. So you can have good decaf coffee and naturally decaffeinated with no chemicals. There's some brilliant brands out there. It can support liver function. Otherwise caffeine itself can have various other sort of negative effects within the body, and I wouldn't really recommend it in pregnancy. So, and what you don't want to do is stop it dead, because otherwise you might get shocking withdrawal headaches, and that's a complete stress. So if you are going, don't worry, I won't drink coffee in pregnancy, it's fine, then cut it, swap it to decaf way before you have transfer, because you do not want to be going through transfer with a banging headache
Okay, yeah.
and the jitters.
So if you aren't a breakfast person, how important is it going through IVF? And they've just said, is a late breakfast, so at 9 a.m., a few hours after getting up, still okay?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there is this whole intermittent fasting, and in the old days, like when I was sort of studying, you sort of several years ago, it was very much, you've got to have breakfast within an hour of getting up. It's the most important thing you do, etc. Now, there are different studies now, different schools of thought. However, if you only have 2 meals a day for IVF, it's almost impossible to get the amount of protein you need in that, because it would be too much protein per meal and your body wouldn't be able to digest it very well. So I think you do need the 3 meals. But if you have breakfast at 9, I don't see the problem with that, if I'm completely honest. And it doesn't have to be enormous, just make it protein based. I mean, it could even be at a pinch, if necessary, tea or coffee, decaffeinated maybe, or whatever, with some collagen powder in. I mean, that will give you some protein. That is going to be better than nothing. But don't start your day on a carb hit. That's whatever time of day. 9, I thought you were going to say late breakfast at 11, 9 would, is fine. Absolutely. I can't see a problem with that. A lot of people can't, get up and feel sick. The last thing they want to do is eat. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. But if you can, also in pregnancy, your blood sugar levels are much more disordered. So obviously, fingers crossed, hoping that the IVF will be successful, actually eating on a regular basis. And often as the pregnancy goes, and sometimes it happens straight away, but certainly sometimes within the second month, couple of months, 2 or 3 months, you need to eat really quite regularly, sometimes every 2 hours. So sort of getting into practice to balance your blood sugar levels is never a bad thing, but do it, if you try and stress yourself out, we're back to the whole stress thing again. So it's not a perfect thing.
Yeah, thank you. And I think this is something that you touched on earlier, was about the ratio for the number of follicles you have for the amount of protein you take. Is there
Yeah,
anything?
I mean, it's not an exact science, but if you have got sort of 20 plus follicles, you are probably going to need more protein than if you've only got 5 follicles. I mean, so with 5 follicles, you probably can do it through food alone. With 20, you probably can't. I mean, I tend to recommend between 70 and 100 grams of protein a day, roughly. Obviously, the lower end with sort of fewer follicles, and the higher end, maybe with more follicles. It's not an exact science, but it does make a difference. Increasing your protein definitely makes a difference with the what you don't want is quantity over quality. And I've seen that happen before. People, they respond really well to the stimulants. They collect 25 eggs, but only 15 of them are mature. That's quite a big fall off. Whereas, they're probably not all going to be mature, but if you can have 18 or 20 mature eggs out of that, you've got another, several to play with. So it can make a difference. But do what your body can deal with as well, because what you don't want is feeling sick and horrific and everything. So this is where a protein powder can help, and sort of dribbling it out over the day. And I tend to say protein is king. If you are feeling full, because protein fills you up, reduce your carb intake for those few weeks. It's only a couple of weeks of stimulation, sort of reduce your carb intake. You can reduce it quite significantly if you need to.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. And if someone's still breastfeeding, can they take CoQ10 and folate for fertility? Yeah.
Yeah, there is no known toxicity. There seems to be no known issues with taking CoQ10 when you're breastfeeding. Folate, absolutely, of course, is good. Omega-3, you can take most things. There are certain herbal things that, maybe are not known. Things like, for instance, the pine bark extract. There is not enough study done. So I tend to say, if people say, what can I take the Vitafen boost? I say, maybe not when you're breastfeeding. I can't give you any guarantee, but most things tend to be reasonably okay when you're breastfeeding.
Okay, thank you. And ideal BMI for a woman doing IVF?
Well, they're, ideally between 20 and 25, but sometimes being on the lower end isn't great. Some people find that they're actually better when they're sort of slightly, 23 maybe, or something, or more, I mean, you could get pregnant very easy with a BMI of 29. It's the ideal would be, but not too low for sure. I wouldn't be, you need to be able to pinch a little bit. Estrogen and progesterone, there, our reproductive cells are made from fat. You need to eat enough fat, and you need to have enough fat in order to store the estrogen as well. So if you are, I mean, I often see people who are extremely slender and get very stressed about it, but when we go through the diets, unless they're lying to me, they're eating fine, they're eating good things, and it's just the genetics, and being very overweight can be a problem, because it's not, it can affect hormone balance, and that it does give you a higher risk of miscarriage, and also things like vitamin D is often low because you're stored in fat cells, you need more folate. There are issues potentially. So, being within a reasonably healthy BMI, but there aren't any specifics, and different people do better at different BMIs, weirdly. And of course, BMI also isn't really the best sort of measurement because of the whole muscle ratio and all that kind of thing.
Okay, and just on the men's about why you need to take a break. So it's not necessarily that you have to, is it? It's just
No,
that,
you don't have to. You don't have to. It's just, I think that's just the research that's been done, and that's why it's in 21. You could take it, but if you bought a pack, you see, the packs tend to last a month. But because there's only 21 in the men's sieve, you'd still be taking the other things for the rest of the month. So you could have that break. It's a probiotic. You can pretty much take probiotics all the time if you want to. I'm not sure it's necessary, to be completely honest, to take the same thing over and over and over again, but it's perfectly safe. It's just expensive.
yeah, that's yeah, exactly. And just with the 2 week wait and reducing stress, so there's someone who's a primary school teacher, 4 to 5 year olds. So,
Oh, lucky you.
so would you recommend during the 2 week wait to try to recommend taking time off or carry on as normal?
I mean, look, do you know what? I've seen people going straight from embryo transfer back into a busy work and having a successful pregnancy. That's from, I mean, normally after embryo transfer, you go home and you lie down at least for the rest of the day. You don't, but, I think it's very much individuals. Some people are more sensitive than others. Some people don't deal with stress so well, and the worrying about them then just makes them it's really dependent on how you are. I would certainly say if you can take the day off and maybe the day after off, but it's really up to you. It's very difficult for me to say. It's how you feel you can deal. I mean, the hope obviously is always that you do an embryo transfer on a Friday, because then you take the Friday off and then you've got the Sunday and the Monday. But life doesn't always work like that, of course. But most people go back to work. It's very much on the individual and on how you deal with your own environment. I think there isn't a blueprint for that at all. And people do, you don't have to lie in a darkened room, sniffing, smelling salts. You can live a normal life after embryo transfer, but you just have to be a bit more gentle on yourself.
Okay, thank you. And then just our final question we've got too. So someone's vegan and about to start IVF. So what would you recommend in regard to protein intake here?
So again, with protein, it's more of a challenge with vegan because you need to have enough protein. So same thing from a protein powder. I've just said, oh, don't go for the pea protein. So you might want to go for a brown rice protein, something like that. Probably would be pumpkin seed is a good one because it's got good zinc. Of course, zinc is quite difficult to get on a vegan diet. Something else which is very difficult to get on a vegan diet and may enhance actually follicle count, even funnily enough, and ovarian function, is choline. So people tend to, there's a lot of study being done with choline. We recommend it in pregnancy, but actually preconceptually it's important. And if you're vegan, it's very hard to get it from a vegan diet. So that and omega-3, really important that you take a good quality algae-based omega-3. But from a protein perspective, you're probably doing all this, so I'm sorry if I'm sort of lecturing you on that. But from a protein perspective, obviously nuts and seeds, pulses and legumes, all that kind of thing. A little bit of soya is fine. Trying to make it sort of things like, tempeh, things and miso, things that are fermented are better, but also probably having some kind of protein powder. But I would maybe go for a brown rice protein powder or something. You could go for a hemp protein powder. You might find that enhances it. Um, Again, there isn't an exact amount. It's harder for you though. It is harder for you, and I can't give you this sort of thing saying, "Oh, pea protein is bad." For me, I say just be aware of what's might be in it and the potential issues with it.
Okay, thank you. So that's all of our questions covered as well. If there's anything that anyone wants to ask after this, if you head to zitawest.com, you can find our email address where you can email. or you can scan to book a free product recommendation call or further discussion with one of our nutritionists, including Isabelle. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Isabelle, as ever, for
You are
all of your
welcome.
wonderful knowledge. And yes, really appreciate everyone taking the time to ask questions and join us here. You will get the recording sent out to you in the next few days. And yeah, we're doing regular webinars or things on Instagram, so make sure you follow us and we can keep you up to date. But yes, thank you so much, Isabelle. I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their evening as well.
Yeah, have a lovely evening and you're welcome. And as I say, yeah, I'm available for questions, just email them through or whatever if there's, things, particular stuff.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And yes, we will see you very soon.